education or vocational or college training and better herself. She intends to continue to assess what she needs for mental health purposes and going to continue to take medication so that she doesn't fall back into her previous ways. When I first met Chloe, all she wanted to do was die. She continued to express severe concerns that she would still try to actively harm herself and that she didn't want to live anymore. Four years later, every day is still a challenge while on medication, but it is something that she is facing head on. She understands that she doesn't need to take those desperate actions, but there are reasons for her to live, and those reasons include being there for him. As Your Honor is aware, life with the possibility of parole requires her to serve 30 years of a minimum in custody prior to being considered for parole. At that point in time, she will be approximately 50 years old, and potentially without the physical presence of her parents due to their age. It is something that Chloe is cognizant of, but also understands the importance of accepting her punishment. She has always said that she has no issue with whatever happens, and she will respect the decision of the court. And she understands that there needs to be a punishment for what happened. She regrets this every day. She may not outwardly express it on phone calls, chirps, text messages. But over the last 4 years, there have been hundreds of phone calls, hundreds of text messages, hundreds of visits with myself and Mr. Kessler. All of which Chloe discusses what happened and is remorseful, is upset, is crying. Your Honor saw Chloe during trial, during the issue of Hannah, and during testimony. You saw her reaction to it today. She is remorseful. She is not without remorse and upset. About what happened. She beats herself up about it every single day. She tries to talk with her parents about Hannah in a positive light to keep her memory alive, and wonders what would happen if she had just done something different. Justice for Hannah in this case includes a sentence of life with the possibility of parole. That takes into consideration all the things the court needs to consider in terms of rehabilitation, punishment, and deterrence. She can be treated, while likely with only medication, in the Department of Corrections, but there are other opportunities for her to avail herself, to rehabilitate herself. And we are asking the court to give her that chance. And we are asking that you sentence her to life with the possibility of parole.
Could y'all hear me just then when I was talking? Because I forgot to add myself to the stage. So let me know. I said hey to you, Jenny, and I said hey to you, Zan, and I said thank you for being here. Let me know if y'all heard me say that before now.
I'll let the state argue, and then I'll hear from Ms. Driver.
All right, thank you.
So that was her defense. This is going to be the prosecution. Zan, a lot of times YouTube creators. Okay, thank you for letting me know that, Jenny. Now I know that I have to add myself to the stage before y'all can hear me. Zan asked, if someone wants to support a creator but doesn't want YouTube to take a cut, how would one do that? A lot of times they'll drop Cash Apps or PayPals or Venmos and things like that. They have Patreons and things. I don't do those things. I don't it's just something that I won't do. I just go through YouTube. But if you're looking to support a certain creator, you could reach out to them and let them know you want to support them and ask them how you could do that. Yeah, I don't want to. I appreciate the thought. A lot of people have told me I should, but it would make me feel bad. I don't believe in like the Cash App, PayPal, and Venmo thing. Personally, it's just a personal preference. But yeah, ask whoever you want to support if they have those options available.
Your Honor, first I'd like to address, I don't know that it's necessary, but in response to Ms. Trethewey and her commentary about trying to work this case out with the state prior to trial. The state has always offered the minimum sentence on murder, which was life with the possibility of parole. The state extended a plea offer for her to plead guilty but mentally ill to life with the possibility of parole. That was our plea offer and has been our plea offer for a very long time. The law does not permit the state to deviate from a life sentence for murder, and that was the minimum sentence that could have been offered, and that was what the state offered.
Zan says stick it to the man. Yeah, I believe that, I can get on here and talk and do all of these things through YouTube for free. I pay for other I pay for StreamYard and stuff, but I just feel like, if I can do that for free and they're going to pay me the little that they do for doing advertisements and stuff in my videos, then I can show respect by not doing PayPal, Cash App, and Venmo. I also feel like when you throw that out, especially when you start a stream with it, it seems more like grifting or tragedy pimping to me. So that's why I won't ever do it. If I did put that stuff out there, I would feel like I was grifting or tragedy pimp. So I just don't. Yeah, if you want to support me, you could do so by giving the video a like and subscribing, and that would be much appreciated.
In anticipation of trying to resolve this case to spare everyone the trauma and burden of having to go through this trial. That was an offer that Ms. Driver chose to reject.
Hey, Trixie, it's good to see you, love.
Secondly, Your Honor, I would like to remind the court of sort of what we saw in the pendency of this case.
I'm gonna grab my coffee.
Ironically, most of the emotional impact of the consequences of her actions came from people who didn't even know Hannah. Came from people in this community who had to respond to the consequences and gravity of her actions. We saw police officers, grown men, who silently wiped their tears from that witness stand as they had to relive that child dying in their arms. We saw grown police officers clearing their throats to try to maintain their professionalism and composure as they had to relive the weight and gravity of what she did. We saw the jurors openly weep for that child.
I do think that this is going to hurt her in the sentencing phase. The fact that they offered her a plea deal and she didn't take it and she went to trial anyway. It's not supposed to hurt you. Like, you have that option legally, but I'm concerned that the judge is going to hold that against her because the prosecution's bringing it up now. And if there wasn't a possibility for it to be held against her, they wouldn't really reference it. And, it's part of her closing arguments, obviously, but it's not supposed to be held against you if you want to go to trial. That's a right you have legally.
As they had to watch that body cam video of her life slipping away and had to watch the autopsy photographs of that baby and the manner in which she was slaughtered by her mother. We watched those people weep and have a visceral reaction to having to see that child in that way. And that was something that was done by Chloe Driver. Ms. Trethewey indicated that this was because of her mental health, but the undisputed fact is she's not in that condition now. She's in above average intelligence. She's perfectly competent. She's medicated. She's receiving care.
But that's the point. She's now medicated and receiving care, whereas at the time she was not. That's the whole point of that. in my opinion. Hey, Indie girl, thank you for being here. Zan said, she's mentally ill, sure, but I feel like she knew what she was doing and her motives weren't about protection, rather about spite. I agree with that statement. I do. Especially after hearing the phone calls that we heard part of when we were going over this trial.
Ms. Trethewey stood before you and said she regrets this every day of her life, and she doesn't necessarily openly express it in her chirps or in her phone calls. And I suspect what she's referencing are the chirps that the state served on the defense that she was sending during the course of her trial. During the course of her trial, where the rest of us were dealing with the burden and weight of having to advocate on behalf of that child, she's going back to the jail every night and having phone sex with her boyfriend, talking about what size penis she likes, how she likes rough sex, how she wants to be treated like a rag doll, how she wants someone to ejaculate in her mouth.
Lord Jesus, honey, calm down. That's interesting. They might have talked about that in trial, but I don't remember that part. But the look on her face is like, what are you talking about? But if the prosecution is saying it, they have evidence of it, or they've heard it, in my opinion.
We are all having to watch people fall to pieces over that baby in this courtroom. And she goes back to the jail and can't wait to have phone sex. It demonstrates what we know, which is a complete calloused indifference for the life of this child. The one person who should care about her.
Right,
What is
Zan?
very clear is that Hannah Nicole Driver, at 13 months old, she could experience fear, she could experience pain, and she knew that that was her mother. And in the last moments of her life, that's what she got to experience. Panic. Fear, pain, and panic.
Yeah, that's a horrible thing to think about. Hey, Jennifer Lude, thank you so much for being here. Jennifer said wowzers, right?
As a knife was repeatedly plunged into her body.
Hmm.
And the fact
Right,
that
man.
the woman responsible for that action, in the condition she's in today, can go back to the jail after watching her child in that condition and send chirps such as, "I'm stressed, talk dirty to me," is appalling to the state. And it should be appalling to this court.
Hmm.
And it demonstrates that she has absolved herself of any responsibility in this and not taken responsibility for the consequences
Sir, excuse yourself. Goodness.
and the weight and the gravity of her actions. It should be really clear to her at this stage what she did and what the weight of that is. And instead, she continues to behave like that. She continues to behave in a way that demonstrates she doesn't get it. She doesn't appreciate.
He is emotionally distraught. I'm thinking that's the dad of the baby, but I'm not sure. But at this point, you might need to excuse yourself.
What she has done. But just because she has absolved herself of responsibility in this by saying it was her mental illness, doesn't mean that the court has to absolve her of that responsibility, nor the law.
Benjamin, I think is his name.
As we sit here during the course of this trial, 4 years later, when she is perfectly stable and perfectly medicated, she continues to demonstrate a callous indifference for the actions that she caused and for the loss of that baby's life.
But I don't think she necessarily would have done it if she had been perfectly medicated, like you just said. I don't know that there's an excuse for doing what she's doing over the phone. I mean, people deal with things in different ways, but like, I don't know. That's weird. I don't know what to say to that really, other than if she was perfectly medicated at the time, I doubt she would have committed the crime.
And that is why the state is recommending a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. Because as we sit here now, she continues to demonstrate that calloused indifference.
I would say a level of immaturity. Zan said, I can see someone reacting in a way to get comfort when dealing with hard issues. That's a good point. So that could be what's going on for sure. Something so base doesn't surprise me, right?
And that complete disregard for the life of that child that should be given the utmost respect. And instead, a bunch of strangers from Cherokee County had to be the ones to compassionately extend our hearts to that baby.
Ms. Trethewey, does the defense have any dispute about the facts stated by Ms. Brocker
Of course,
Yeah.
as far as,
of course she does.
And I'm gonna preface this by saying, I think it's pretty petty at this point, since we were served these at 4:30 yesterday afternoon, with respect to this particular incident. They have absolutely no relevance to why we're here today whatsoever. The state can acknowledge, and I don't think they would disagree with me, that there are thousands of phone calls and chirps and text messages, including ones with that gentleman right there, that indicate that she was remorseful, that she was upset about what happened. There are phone calls, hours worth of phone calls of her crying on the phone, talking about what happened.
I mean, I agree. If you're going to bring up one, you need to bring it up, all of it up.
The fact that she was talking to a
And it is really petty that they gave them that at 4:30 the day before sentencing. Like, that is really petty and shows me that there's some hostilities between the prosecution and the defense in this trial.
I'll say that she was talking to this individual on the phone for months leading up to trial. State has those phone calls. They serve those on us. She didn't talk about the case at that particular point in time because that's what she was instructed to do. She wasn't talking about the facts of this case. She wasn't telling this gentleman that she was getting away with anything or doing anything. She was not talking about the case because that's what she was instructed to do so. She is allowed to talk to people. She did so at the jail. She didn't talk about the case because that's what we told her not to do. The fact that she didn't say, oh, I'm upset about what happened at trial today, or I'm upset about what happened to Hannah on these phone calls, it has nothing to do with whether or not she was remorseful. And I'm going to say this, and I've kept my mouth shut about this for a very long time. I have an email from Ms. Crawford.
She's getting petty. She's ill. She's spilling the beans, this defense attorney.
From February of 2023. Ms. Crawford and the district attorney's office sought out us to sit down and talk to Ms. Driver at the jail in an attempt to work this case out. I take issue with the assertion by the state that we categorically rejected the felony murder, guilty but mentally ill, life with parole option. What we have always strived for in this case was a reduction in the charge that appropriately reflected the mitigation that Ms. Driver suffered, the mental illness aspect of it. But I'll also go back to this email. This was at the request of the state to sit down and talk to Ms. Driver at the jail. This was also at a time where the district attorney's office was well aware that there had been communication for a very long period of time with Mr. Ben Michael at the jail. In that email, the purpose of this case, the meeting was to
I'm just trying to hear what the email is.
determine what information Ms. Driver possessed about the criminal culpability of Ben Michael, aka Brian Joyce, which could be presented at a proper under oath under any potential plea of guilty that she may enter. The way that Ms. Crawford is categorizing the plea negotiations in this case are inaccurate. The state during that meeting, Ms. Driver told the district attorney's office and myself she was continuing to contact Mr. Ben Michael, provided them information that they didn't previously have, which subsequently led to the discovery of a bunch of other phone calls. Ms. Driver told them that. She was honest with them about it. What the state is not talking about here is the suicide aspect that was involved in this case, that the state was looking at this from all angles with the other people's involvement in terms of criminal culpability, but also with regards to her mental health.
I mean, all important factors to take into consideration. Jenny said, I'll exchange my coffee for tea. I drink coffee mostly, but like if I have a lot of herbs and things that I use, like mullein for coughing and things, and horehound for coughing. So if I have something going on, I'll drink tea. But other than that, I just drink my coffee.
That has always been what this case is about. She exercised her right to trial because she has the right to do that. She exercised her right to trial because the state of Georgia, despite these plea negotiations and the evidence in front of them, did not want to recognize the mental health aspect and what we were asking for in terms of a lesser charge. Ms. Driver exercised her right to trial to show this world what that gentleman is like, what life with him is like, to put before this world that she is not the only victim of this person, and that in an attempt that maybe other people will be aware of what this involves. She has always accepted responsibility for the actions. We saw it at the hospital. We saw it with Detective Cruz. We've seen it in subsequent interviews with the experts. She has never denied what happened. She's never denied what she did and what she did to herself. And she understands what needs to be happen. At this point in time, Judge, the fact that she's talking to another individual is irrelevant. She's allowed to do that. They're not talking to you about any of the phone calls where she may be talking.
I mean, it is irrelevant that she's talking to somebody over the phone. She's allowed to talk to people, but it is disturbing to know that she's, having phone sex during the trial after just looking at the photos. But, again, like Zan said, people deal differently with stress. And Zan had said earlier, I could see someone reacting in a way to get comfort when dealing with hard issues. And I think it would fall more along the lines of that, or a level of immaturity on her part. Zan said, coffee drinker here, except Twinings winter spice hot or cold. Yummy, non-caffeinated drink. I've never heard of that, and I will have to look into that. Hello. Oh my goodness. Tessin in the hood. Lucy. What you know about Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds? What you know about that? I'm going to call you Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Said, I feel for Chloe. I do not agree with her sentence. Have some compassion, people. This is a tragedy. An older man who is a psychopath and a cult leader take advantage of a young girl. I do agree with that aspect of it. And I think she was in a horrible mental health state of mind. Like, her mental health was horrible at the time. I don't think I can't excuse the murder of a child due to mental health, but I definitely think it weighs heavily in this trial. And at the end of the day, she did murder her daughter, but I don't hold as much resentment against her once I learned about her mental health. So I just, yeah, that's where I stand at on that. Zan said, I can see your side, Lucy. I don't agree. She shouldn't be accountable. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. I think she should be accountable, but the mental health aspect of this case should weigh heavily in sentencing and taken into consideration, because if she had been on the right medication and seeing a psychiatrist or even just a therapist, I don't think this would have happened. The older man taking advantage of the younger women, other women in the house, all of that was horrible in this case. And it all contributed to what happened, in my opinion.
Talking to her parents about what happened. There are plenty of phone calls where she's on the phone with her mom and her dad, hysterical in tears about what happened and knowing what it did to them and to everybody else that is affected by this.
The state has the right to conclude. Anything else that you wanted to say, Ms. Rock? And then I'll let y'all approach the lectern, and I'll hear from
I would
Ms.
just like
Driver.
to say that the defense's stated objection with regard to all of the sexting she was doing during the trial was relevance, not dispute as to whether it occurred. The state served all of those on the defense. It didn't find it necessary to read every disgusting message into the record, but the state's position is that her general moral character is admissible at a pre-sentence hearing, so it is relevant, and it also demonstrates a lack of remorse in terms of the timing and the context of when those messages occurred in relation to the days we were watching her daughter die on video and reviewing the autopsy photographs. That is the reason the state brought that information before you. So I'll just like to make that clear.
All right, Ms. Trethewey, and Mr. Kessler, if you want to approach as well, Ms. Driver, you can come to the lectern and make any kind of statement that you'd like to.
Hey, Toxic. Lucy, if I did,
You will
Lucy and
place
Scout
her
with Diamonds,
in
if
your
I didn't say thank you for being here, thank you for being here and sharing your thoughts.
All right, Chloe, for the first thing I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you raise your right hand. Do you swear the information testimony you're about to give this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Okay, you're going to have to speak up. I know that you're fairly soft-spoken, so.
She looks defeated and sounds that way too.
Are you able to get that? All right, go ahead.
I appreciate the opportunity to be heard during this whole process. I am terribly sorry for many things in my life, but most of all for who was lost, and I always will be. Every single day I live with my guilt. I have drowned in sorrow and regret with such an acute awareness of it for so long. I never imagined there would be anything more than that for me. Quite frankly, I didn't believe I deserved anything more than just that. In the past, I genuinely believed I had to die every day for my daughter, to hate myself for my failure in protecting her. But I know now that life goes on whether I suffer or not, so I need to stop taking from it. I know now that I must live for my daughter instead and do the best I can to be kind and loving and giving, because that's exactly what being with Hannah taught me. I see her everywhere, in everything. She lives on and shows me that beauty can be found anywhere, even where I'm going, because I can feel her in my tears. I feel her in my friend's embrace. I see her in a stranger's kindness, in someone's undiluted joy at seeing their loved one. I hear her in people's laughter, and I know her most of all in my family's loyal love for me, even still. No matter how bad our losses, life can be good again, and this is not my end. I accept my punishment with peace, and I want it to be known for every person that has prayed for me, that our Father has heard you, and I have been given a contentment that the world cannot take away. My daughter's memory rests now, so I am able to as well. I want it to be said that no one ever plans to lose control of their own mind. This trial was only a snapshot of my life and mind. It's easy to review the past and say what could have been done differently. It's even easier to say what someone should have done. But that's just it. In the midst of a terrifying situation, you can't actually think. The horror and fear you feel clouds your thinking abilities and disconnects you from reality. So though I may not legally meet the definition of insanity as of today, I know in the bottom of my heart that I was, because I never would have done what I did had it not been for my decompensation. In the end, we can't go back and undo the bad, no matter how much we want to, but we can learn from it and prevent it from happening again. I will continue to seek help for my mental illness because of this. I read once that suffering is cheap as clay and twice as common. What matters, though, is what each man makes of it, and I promise I will make the best of whatever you give me, Your Honor. Thank you.
I wanted to let her finish speaking. Hello, I know who killed you. Thank you so much for being here. I know who killed you said her baby doesn't get to go on and be happy. Right, I agree with that. I stated that, I hold on, let me read this one real quick. Toxic says she's definitely defeated, but she had so many options to seek help. Instead, she took her child's life. Right. The issue, like, I don't excuse what she did by any means. There is an issue with the mental health aspect of it. But again, I want to point out that she should have sought help. She should have got on the proper medication. There's people out there dealing with the same mental issues that she is and have not hurt anybody. The fact that she took her baby's life is horrible, and she needs to account for that. And but at the same time, I feel like if she had been on the proper medication, this would have never happened. So I think it needs to be taken, like her mental health needs to be taken into account, but she still needs to pay for what she did to her child.
Yeah, y'all stay. Yes.
Maybe life without parole or life with parole or something. I don't know. Yeah, I like your name too, Zan. I mean, I know who killed you. Zan likes it too. I'd say maybe life with parole after like 30 years, maybe. At least 25.
I have continued to think about this case after the verdict, as I am sure all of us have. I have been aware that based on the law, that my only real discretion in this case is whether to sentence you to life without parole or life with the possibility of parole. I am aware, as Ms. Trethewey pointed out, that the parole eligibility
Right.
in this
Yeah.
state would dictate that you would serve 30 years of a life sentence before you were considered for parole.
Hey, Need Some Z's. Need Some Z says, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember her mental health issues being anxiety and depression. Am I wrong? It could be, but she was having, like, she felt like when she breastfed her baby, she was imprinting on the baby, because they tell you that as a mother, when you breastfeed your child, you imprint on them. And she thought that she was imprinting evil into her daughter. So she had a lot of other I mean, there's got to be some kind of schizophrenia or other definition psychosis, because she was going through severe psychosis. I'll look it up real quick. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think there's more than anxiety and depression, just hearing what she talked about as far as why she felt like her baby was evil at the time. No more kids, and her mental health solidly managed, right? She was diagnosed with psychotic symptoms of sort. Can't remember. Thank you, Zan. I know who killed you real quick. Said mental health is a huge issue in the U.S. I live in Norway, and we are shocked daily at the amounts of murders happening in the U.S. It seems lately that there's an epidemic of child murders. I agree with that 100%, and mental health is definitely an issue here in the States. For sure.
This was a heinous offense with evidence that was so graphic and traumatic that I began to do research on what kind of support and help we could give the jurors who were having to consider it.
She said that the judge just stated that she had to try to seek help for the jurors that had to watch this. Zan said, yeah, well, that's what happens when healthcare costs so much. Yeah, it's a problem. Insurance companies charge insane deductibles and people can't seek the help they need. I agree, 100%.
Parent killing a child is something that just offends us on the deepest level. It is a wrong that just is unfathomable. It just cannot be understood.
Yeah, Jenny.
And it scares us.
Let me look it up real quick.
Because it is so contrary to just fundamental moral behavior and what we expect of the bonds between human beings. And I have all those thoughts. I have had all those thoughts in this case.
Okay, I've got it.
I have.
So it says, Garrett. Okay. Hold on, let me read it. In fact, Dr. McLeod Garrett, a forensic psychologist, testified that Chloe Driver pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity due to her multiple mental health disorders, including schizoaffective disorder, borderline personality disorder, and a cannabis use disorder. I don't think the cannabis use is a disorder personally, but the schizoaffective disorder and borderline personality disorder definitely contributed to this case. Excuse me. Needsome Z said, from what I remember when I watched this trial, was that she didn't want the poly relationships from the beginning and wanted her husband for herself. She had money saved and locked the door behind her. Yes, that's accurate. Imagine the trauma of jurors. They are just ordinary people listening to such awful things. I empathize with them. Yeah, I don't know that I could see. And they had to see the body cam footage of the baby dying. Like I would be some kind of messed up too. Zan said, could not have turned mushy brain round after a traumatic event if it weren't for excellent insurance, but I'm a lucky one. Oh goodness, I'm sorry you had to deal with that. My Needsome Z says, me personally, I was not swayed by the slightest but in the slightest by any claims of mental health issues. I think it contributes in this case, but I can understand your point of view and respect that. Hi, Lolly, and thank you for being here. So she can get out in 30 years. I don't know. We're not there yet. Possibly. Hey, bad girl.
I noticed throughout the trial and considered it as part of the tragedy, quite honestly, that there were really no family members here to support you, and that Mr. Ben Michael was not here interested in the outcome of what was going to happen to his child, the person who killed his child. That was a very interesting dynamic.
I was wondering if he was there, so he wasn't even there. Hey, Red Act Ed. Thank y'all for being here. Hey, Zio. I said hi to you in chat, but I didn't say it live because she was talking, Chloe.
To me. So I'm glad to see him here today. You don't need to speak to me at this point, sir. Your opportunity to speak has come and gone. Although the response I just heard doesn't do anything to make the whole situation any less tragic.
I'm going to have to go back in a minute and see if I can hear what he said. I didn't catch what he said.
But as I said, I'm glad to have heard from Mr. Ben Michael and to
I didn't catch it. I'm gonna let it see so we can see what she sentenced to, and then I'll go back and try to hear it. Lolly said that is a broken man. I think he's broken, but he has some accountability in all this too. Not for the state of for her surroundings and things like that. I think he needs to take accountability as well for that. And I know in Asheville, she ran out of the house and like ran into traffic because she was in such a state of panic and shock with her mental disorder, and they just took her right back inside. And I don't think they sought help for her. That's a problem for me with the other people in the house.
Honestly, try to give him some benefit of the doubt, understanding that there is an impact on him that cannot be measured, as he put it, and just again an impact on the universe. One more child who never goes to school, never gets to have a boyfriend or go to the prom, never gets to decide what a career is.
Yes, needs some Z's. I tried to type it, but it pushed it back.
They're not words to talk about what a terrible thing it is. But I do also feel bound to consider the fact that if you had succeeded,
we're going to go back and listen to it, Zan.
We would not have been here. We would have read about a tragic, inexplicable murder-suicide. I have to take into account,
We do need to take that into account that she attempted to commit suicide. And at first I thought she only stabbed herself, but she in the neck, but she did it like a bunch of times. So it's evident that she really was trying to leave this earth. Two.
that 3 different psychologists testified as to your profound mental illness, the depths of your sickness, your illness. I have to take into account the fact that the jury found you guilty but mentally ill,
Good question. I know.
because they obviously were aware they had the choice
You want to go out, Basil?
imposing a different sentence. I sent a different verdict, I'm sorry, a verdict of guilty that did not reference any of your mental illness. Georgia law, Georgia statute means that the guilty but mentally ill verdict gives the Department of Corrections some direction and some ability to continue to provide treatment for you, but that is in their discretion.
Real quick, Need Some Z said she hardly injured herself from what I recall. The wounds were shallow. I thought that too, but then in trial, I learned that she stabbed herself in the neck. She stabbed herself in the chest. She had actually done it 5 times. So that's when I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So she actually really was trying to leave this earth, because I thought so too. I thought she just like stabbed herself in the neck and it wasn't even that bad, but like it was really bad. And she had done it like 5 times and got herself in the chest from what I heard and what I remember from trial. So I don't know. I think she really was at the time. Hey, Cara, thank you for being here. But we won't know because we're not in her state of mind.
There's no black and white law as to how a judge is to consider that verdict. I will note that the jury found that you did not meet the criteria of not guilty by reason of insanity. The law in Georgia has been the same for about 200 years now. Whether or not that ever changes because of changes in medical and societal understanding of mental illness and how to treat it, I do not know. The intersection between law and medicine can be, it does not always mesh well. Things evolve. We now have treatment courts for people with mental illness and addiction, substance use issues, and the law and the courts slowly come about in proper cases to figure out about treatment. I don't quarrel with the jury's verdict. I don't impose this sentence out of sympathy. But I do think under everything that I heard, the sentence needs to take into account the possibility that in 30 years, there may be different treatment modalities, different recommendations, different possibilities for your rehabilitation.
Oh, thank you. I know who killed you. That's so sweet. A lot of people tell me that. I appreciate it.
I think the notion that you are cured because you're taking medication regularly now is something that I don't accept. I believe everyone acknowledges that, or at least based on the law and the testimony we heard in this case, that borderline personality disorder, for example, is a deep sickness that is not treated just by medication, for example. You were treated in order for you to gain competency to be able to actually go to trial. I don't think anybody who's dealt with anybody with mental illness is naive enough to suggest that you're cured. And I know I don't mean that as a criticism or a punishment. It's just reality. You did a horrible thing. But based on the evidence at trial and based on particularly the mental health testimony.
I agree with you. Need some Z's. It kicked my comment again.
The court will impose the following sentence as to count 1, malice murder, life in prison with the possibility of parole. Count 2 and count 3 are vacated as a matter of law in that you cannot be sentenced to more than one murder count when there is only one victim. Count 4 merges into count 1. I agree with the state that count 5 does not merge into count 1 as it contains a different element. That is that the victim is a child under the age of 18. That is not an element of malice murder specifically. So as to count 5, the court imposes a sentence of 20 years to serve in the state prison system concurrent with count 1. You have a right to appeal this conviction.
They said with Cara, Bad Girl pointed out that her lawyer is crying. She had she got, for the first count, it was life with the possibility of parole.
You have a right to file a motion for new trial requesting other post-judgment relief. You must file any such notice of appeal or motion for new trial within 30 days of sentencing. You are entitled to have a lawyer represent you.
Okay, and then she got 20 years concurrent with her current sentence, which means that while she's serving the 25, or I think it's possibility of parole after 30 years, while she's serving that sentence, it also is going to serve the 20 years. So basically, from what I understand, is that she has the possibility of parole after 30 years, which means she has to go in front of the parole board and be paroled. I do believe.
And if you cannot afford to hire one will be appointed to represent you. I know Ms. Trethewey and Mr. Kessler are familiar with the procedures of our Indigent Defense Office as to how new counsel would be appointed to represent you moving forward. I would request that the counsel, if you will remain with us, and we will keep Ms. Driver, we can keep her here to get the minutes prepared, reviewed, signed, and get that taken care of. before Ms. Driver is taken away from the jail. Or the holding cell, yes. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go back so we can understand what Ben Yamin said. So I do believe after about 30 years, she'll have a possibility to get paroled. I think that's what they said. Okay, so it was after this. Yep, I think that was it. Let's see.
Graphic and traumatic that I began to do research on what kind
Yeah.
of support and help we could give the jurors who were
Okay, so it should be right after this.
having to consider it. A parent killing a child is something that just offends us on the deepest level.
We're going back to see if we can catch what he said. I'm going to turn it all the way up.
It is a wrong that just is unfathomable. It just cannot be understood. And it scares us because it is so contrary to just fundamental moral behavior and what we expect of the bonds between human beings. And I have all those thoughts. I have had all those thoughts in this case. I noticed throughout the trial.
Right here.
And considered it as part of the tragedy, quite honestly, that there were really no family members here to support you, and that Mr. Ben Michael was not here interested in the outcome of what was going to happen to his child, the person who killed his child. That was a very interesting dynamic to me. So I'm glad to see him here today.
I was in jail.
You don't need to speak.
He said I was in jail during the trial. So, and that's right. He was in jail on some other charges. I'm going to take it back just a smidge and we'll hear that again.
I noticed throughout the trial and considered it as part of the tragedy, quite honestly, that there were really no family members here to support you, and that Mr. Ben Michael was not here.
I think he said I was in jail and couldn't be here for the trial. I think that was the whole statement. I heard I was in jail.
You're interested in the outcome of what was going to happen to his child, the person who killed his child. That was a very interesting dynamic to me. So I'm glad to see him here today. You don't need to speak to me at this point, sir. Your opportunity to speak has come and gone.
So he said I was in jail and couldn't be here. So that's going to be about the end of that. Then she, she's going to obviously tell the jurors, you have some very special privileges, all of that stuff. So, yeah, that was a good reason for not being there, for sure. Lolly. I saw you said as a mother of 5, I might be cold-hearted, but as a mother of 5, what she did is unforgivable. I agree with that statement. Hold on, I was going to search what his charges were real quick. I agree with that statement. My issue is her mental health and the fact that if she'd have been on the correct medication, she probably would not have committed the crime. Here, let's do this, actually. I'll search on my phone for what he was in jail for, and we'll pull back up YouTube and do, because I know they've got the most, memorable moments or important moments, I'm sure, of this trial, and we can go through that real quick. I know that one person that Jason person was there, and we talked about that stuff and the charges he had. There's a Vinnie Politan investigates. Let me see. Yep, there's the top 5, but it's an hour and 18 minutes long. I can't do that. Hold on, let me show y'all. Let me share this so y'all can see. All right. Yeah, because I got to go live in an hour and a half. We can watch this real quick.
It was in the garage, and Shaylee and Gamliana and I were all standing in the driveway.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what happened next?
I heard Z scream.
This is Jason Spillers, and we talked about that he was texting a minor talking about your hymen better be intact. It was craziness. If you haven't seen that, it's in a previous live stream. I'm going to work on getting those in some kind of order too, like make playlists. Lolly, that's so sweet. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Was CPS aware of her mental health? I doubt it. I don't think so. I don't think Child Protective Services were involved in this case, unfortunately. And maybe if they had been, we might would have had a different outcome. Cara said mental health seems to be an underlying issue in a lot of the cases you cover. Heck, even Eileen Mornos needed treatment for mental health. Absolutely. Yeah, there is a mental health aspect to it. Rubber Ramada, that comes in here a lot, is going to start a channel talking about the mental health with true crime. So I think that's going to be interesting. I think she's going to go down those roads. And, another live later. You're spoiling us. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I go live every day at 1:30 my time. And it's 12 o'clock. Today it's 12 o'clock right now. That's going to be the one today is going to be a babysitter who murdered her and her boyfriend, beat a little 2-year-old girl to death. It's horrible. Lolly, I agree. This guy is some kind of something. I'll say that.
Okay. And
Like
what did
this.
you hear him scream?
No, just like this, like at the like this terrified.
And he's like on the stand talking about freaking, like, I don't know what your perception of reality is, or what journey you're on in life, or what, wormhole portal you came from, all out of his head. You can see he's in jail uniform right here.
Painful scream, like just like a scream, like it was like shocking. Like Z doesn't really scream like that. That's the only time I've ever heard him express any sound that even closely resembled that. It was
Is he typically quiet?
No, he just doesn't. I mean, the trauma, of pain. It was just a scream of utter, just so much pain was in his voice. And so I didn't even know what had happened. I had no idea what had happened. But I was outside and I told Gami, I was like, "You need to call 911 right now." And so she started calling 911, and I ran inside the house. Shayla was already running back in the house, and so did Jerry.
Okay.
When we heard him scream like that.
You
This is how I
previously,
remember. Maybe Jerry wasn't standing outside. I feel like these details are probably more or less irrelevant, but at one point Jerry was standing outside. I don't know if Jerry was still in the garage right there at the.
But you can kind of get like the way he is by the way he's even talking right now. Cara, a lot of times there's not, and I agree with that. I think that I don't like the way we deal with things like that here. Bad Girl said, wonder why the father didn't testify, especially if this guy can leave jail to testify. Can they leave jail to testify? I think they could, actually, because if they got called to testify, yeah, the jail would have to take them. So that's a good point. Cara said Florida got it right with you're up for the death penalty if you're a chomo of a minor 13 and younger. I agree with that statement for sure. I think the death penalty should be available for things like that, because that child is never going to be the same. I mean, regardless, people who are assaulted in that kind of way are never going to be the same, but especially a young child, like, oh God.
The house when I heard Z scream, but Gami and I definitely were. And I told her to call the cops.
okay.
To call 911 because something was definitely wrong. Like I had no idea what had happened, but it was a scream of pain and like something like bad, you know, like
You previously testified that you're not a call the cops kind of guy, and you're
So-
obviously sitting here wearing orange.
That's
So, tell me what about what you heard made your first instinct be call 911?
you know, I can't really remember. I don't remember. I just remember hearing the scream, and perhaps like I can't even remember
Cara, I agree with what you said.
what happened in between there. It's like it's been so long. It's like I don't know exactly
Right,
what the
Lolly?
sequence of events was,
Thank you,
but
Jenny.
something compelled me. I said, "Gami, you need to call 911 right now," and she did.
Okay.
And I ran inside, and then I ran upstairs because that's where the scream was coming from. And then I walked into this like really horrible thing.
Okay. What happened when you walked into the room?
I walked into the room and there was blood everywhere. And Z was, I'm going to talk through this one. Z was trying to give Nimsy like mouth to mouth. Like she had obviously had some laceration wounds to her neck, and there was like blood everywhere. And Kawani was laying on the ground, and she had tried to kill herself by stabbing herself in the chest and in the throat, and she was bleeding profusely. And so I was just went into shock, basically. Like I have very little or no experience, especially with a child. Like, I mean, I witnessed a couple things, but not like this. And so
Red Axe said, helpless child. She hurt that child just because she could. I have to take into account the fact that she had such hostile feelings towards her husband and the women in the house. I have to question whether she was trying to take the child away from her husband because she knew that he loved that child so much. But at the same time, the mental health aspect of it plays a part in it for me. I don't think she should be forgiven for what she did. I don't think, like, you could, if you're going to go down the aspect of she was so hostile towards the other wives and her husband at that point in time that she murdered Hannah. It's hard because I still have to take the mental health aspect into consideration. I don't know if we'll ever know if she did it specifically because she knew it would hurt him. I would think if she did that, she would not have tried to kill herself, or it would have been like we were talking about earlier, just, artificial type wound, not artificial, but, just on the skin, not real deep. He's talking about how she's bleeding profusely. I think she tried to leave this earth as well with Hannah. The issue with this case is the mental health aspect of it and how large of a role it plays. I don't think it's forgivable what she did by any means, but she is going to be serving a 30-year sentence with a possibility of parole afterwards. And by then she won't be able to have children if I had to assume her age. People do, but the odds are rare. So, does it pay for what she did to Hannah? Absolutely not. But does it make me feel better about it? Yes. After 30 years of being on medication, do I think she could come out here and possibly live somewhat of a normal life? I do. I think she could be rehabilitated. And not all people could. And the reason she could be rehabilitated is because of the mental health aspect of it. As long as she stays on her medication and is drug tested to make sure that medication shows up in her system, I think she could be rehabilitated after 30 years. A lot of people did fail this baby. The household was crazy. I mean, there was just so much. It was too much for anybody to try to deal with, in my opinion.
So Z's like giving his daughter mouth to mouth, trying to like breathe some life back into her, and she's like gurgling her last breath. And Kawani's laying on the floor, bleeding profusely.
Was Nimsy still alive when you went into the room?
She was on her way out.
Okay.
Like she was gurgling, but she wasn't moving, and she looked very not alive.
Okay. And tell me about your interaction with Kawani, sorry.
I went to the ground, and Z said, "Keep pressure on the wounds." And so I did. I went down and I kept pressure on the wounds, and I tried to just stop them from bleeding. I was using my sweatshirt and my hands to put pressure on the wound that was on her chest and on her neck until the paramedics got there.
Okay. And how was Kawani reacting to you? Was she saying anything or doing anything?
She was saying that she wanted to see Nimsy one more time, and she was actually trying to push me away. She was, you know what? Earlier I said there was only one time when I touched Kawani, but that was the second time.
Gorgeous George, thank you for being here. Gorgeous George says, wow, this is crazy. I really didn't think she'd be sentenced to life in prison. She needs to be in a mental health facility. She was sentenced to 30 years with the possibility or life. I think she gets the possibility of parole after 30 years. And I understand and respect your opinion. I think that she's been on medication in the prison and they have her on medication that's got her kind of under control. So I think she'll be okay as long as she continues to see the psychiatrist at the prison on a normal basis and she stays on her medication. And I don't know if you're here, but I just talked about how I feel like she could be rehabilitated after 30 years as long as they make sure she's on her medication. I don't forgive her for what she did, but again, the mental health aspect of this is what caused this, in my opinion. Lolly said, but don't you see a lot of these murders try to cut the mental health excuse? Some of them do, yes. I don't think this was because of the wounds and the extensiveness of the wounds and how she was bleeding profusely. Zan said earlier in ICU for at least a week. That for me is what kind of sealed it. We could say that, I'm not mentally stable. If you're good enough, you could even trick psychiatrists into thinking you have diagnoses that you don't. But there's evidence. She was running out in traffic in Asheville. They had to bring her back in the house. She's asking to go get help. She's saying she doesn't feel right. So there's places that I could see this more as a mental health thing than I could with other cases. I Know Who Killed You said, don't know what this guy is in prison for, but he came across as somewhat decent and articulate. But then again, I have no idea what put him in jail. What put him in jail is that he was stalking a girl that was 14 and talking about marrying her and how her hymen needed to be intact. I've got a live on that. I will see if I can figure out which one. But if you look up charges for Jason Spillers from Chloe Driver trial, you'll be able to pull up the article. I'll see if I can post the article on my community tab. I'll pull it from the live and see if I can post it. Cara said, you get more people faking mental health, trying to use mental health excuse, like Letitia Stout. Yes, absolutely. But Letitia Stout is not... Chloe Driver is different because we have where there's evidence of it, like her saying that, I need help. She's running out in traffic. She actually stabbed herself to where she's bleeding profusely in an ICU. Letitia Stout was definitely not mental health. Georgia said, well, some murderers are mentally ill and need to be kept away from society, but given help. I don't think prison is where this woman belongs. I can understand and respect your opinion. I personally, like I said, I think if she's kept on her medication and sees a psychiatrist, she'll be okay because she's doing okay right now and during the trial. But I can understand and respect your opinion. If I had a choice, I would think a mental health facility would be good for her. But seeing that she's okay with her medication and the psychiatrist from the jail, I think she is okay personally, but I respect your opinion. Cara said to I Know Who Killed You, he was in prison for crimes with a minor. Right. Yep. All right. I'm going to play this while I continue reading your comments.
When I was trying to save her life, I was holding pressure on the wound. She had blood all over her hands and she was pushing my face away.
And I Know Who Killed You, he does seem articulate, but he also talks out of his head sometimes. But he was really knowledgeable about some things, and it kind of blew me away because I look into things like what he talks about, like, life experiences and parallel universes, and I like to study ancient religions and, I look at UFO stuff, all that stuff, and it surprised me how well educated or articulate he was about these things. But he does a lot of word salad too. And yeah, the crimes with the minor thing, it's not, that's not excusable, in my opinion. You take it back, he's a creep, really good at faking and being a nice guy. Yeah, some of it he's articulate about, some of it's a bunch of word salad, but he's not a nice guy. But yeah, now that you didn't know that, so you're good.
Telling me stop, I'm supposed to die. And I wanted to see, and then she was like trying to lean up to see Nimsy one more time, but I held her down because I thought that, I just didn't want her to lose any more blood because there was blood everywhere and all over me and all over our clothes and all over the floor and the bed. It was like a massacre. And I just wanted to try to save her life. So I held her down and kept pressure on the wounds for probably about 2 minutes because the paramedics came really fast.
Okay. So she told you to stop. She tried to push you away.
Yeah.
She said, I'm supposed to die, and that she wanted to see Nimsy one last time.
Yes.
Is that what you recall?
Yes.
Okay. And you indicated that you were attempting to save her life and that
Yeah.
Zee was attempting to save Hannah's life.
Yeah, he was.
Did you care about Kuwani and Hannah?
Of course.
Do you still care about them?
Yes.
Okay. And after this happened, did you maintain a relationship with Kuwani?
Actually, yeah.
After she was arrested, did you all continue to communicate with her?
Yeah, she called from inside jail a lot.
Okay.
And we had a chance to speak a couple times. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, Bad Girl brings up a good point that I forgot. They drink their own pee. He does, they do. They all drink their own urine. I don't understand that. Like, a wilderness situation, sure, but just to be drinking it, like your body excretes it because it's not good for you. Like that's the waste your body produces. Stop it. There are, Lolly, to be fair, there are smart chomos as well. There are.
And
Yep.
do you know for how long she maintained a relationship with you and Z and the other women after she was arrested for murdering Hannah?
Gosh, I can't remember. I have no idea.
Okay.
A while, more than a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you a part of some of those phone conversations?
I was, yeah.
And what was the tone of those phone conversations?
Pretty like mellow, really. Like just pretty just, she's in jail and
Red Axe said, "Oh Lord, what the hell? What the
we were
hell?"
talking to her and just reminded her that we love her and that even though this was like a horrible thing and we forgive her, we know that wasn't her that did that. And we still love her and care about her and we forgive her for that because we know that she would never do that.
And did she continue to express love for all of you?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And have you maintained contact and stayed in contact with Z?
Yeah,
Okay. And have you all discussed that, you still care about Kuwani and you don't want anything bad to happen to her?
that's right.
Okay. And have you discussed that it is your desire that she go to a mental hospital and not be in state custody?
I mean, honestly, when it comes to that, I feel like my opinion is that she's
Oh, Gorgeous George, here you go. So he was asking the court to send her to a mental health facility. So that goes along with what you were saying. I didn't even remember this part. So there you go, Gorgeous George. It was brought up. So it's kind of ironic that you were talking about that, and now he's bringing that up. Lolly said chomos can't be rehabilitated either. Yeah, I have, I want to be politically accurate as much as I can, but I have a problem with that too. I don't think that you should come out if you have molested children. I don't think there's any rehabilitation for that, in my opinion.
this woman has suffered enough, with all of her, I can imagine having to deal with knowing that something that you lost control of your own mind to the point where you killed your own daughter. Like women don't kill their babies. Like that's really rare, and when you do see it, it's usually a case of like the child is unwanted. That's not what this was. This was not an unwanted child. This was some kind of deep thing being expressed through Kuwani that started, like I said, the trauma that fractured her, I think began when she was a child. And Z did what he could to help her with that. And so did all of us. And it ended up being this really horrific thing. And I do think that basically, like, I know that, I just don't think that prison is the place for her. No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't think that I think that she's just going to degrade and these prisons are horrible, and they're just like.
Have you stated previously that you think she suffered enough and that you all believe she needs to be free in society?
That's a question mark. Like free in society, I think that she should be. I think that it should be acknowledged that in the term of what we'll call, not guilty due to insanity. It's like you hear about people using this as a cop-out plea, and this is actually like one real one.
Okay. And we've discussed that you don't know what the law in Georgia is, right?
I don't.
So that was him testifying, and that goes back to what we were just talking about as well with the mental health aspect of the case, as far as Letitia Stout and things like that. I know that guy's out of his head, but I do believe that this really is a case of mental health issue. And then Gorgeous George, he was talking about, again, putting her in a facility, trying to get that done. So it was talked about. Cara said, I get mug shots for arrest in my county, and one older man was arrested 3 other times for doing and showing bad things to minor. Yeah, see, that's bullshit. He should no, lock him up. Don't let him out. He's obviously going to continue to reoffend until he hurts somebody. Bald on top and mullet in the back. No doubt, Red Act. I saw that too. I know who killed you said, as someone who has survived. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't want to, well, I'll continue. I can testify to the fact that it does so much lifelong damage. In some ways, it's murder of the person's soul and innocence. I absolutely agree with that. I have been abused as a young teenager as well. And I'm so sorry that you deal with that or have had to deal with that. I couldn't imagine. It does. It changes your life. It destroys it. Innocence is lost. Yeah. Lolly said it destroys a child's life forever for self-gratification. Absolutely. I agree 100%. Those scars last forever, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm so sorry for anybody that's ever had to deal with that. I'm so sorry. Red Axe said, I can't take anyone serious that drinks their own pee. Right? Right? Lolly said, I know who killed you. I'm so sorry. Cara said, I think now he's finally in prison for life. I don't know if he got life or not, but I hope he got a long time. I'm sorry, said Cara. And then Red Act also said, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'm so sorry. That's a horrible thing to even think about. I'm going to go ahead and end this live because I didn't start it with the intro like I usually do in the song and stuff. So I'm just going to end this stream and I'll see y'all back in an hour and 10 minutes. It says 12:22 here now, and I'll start at 1:30. So I'll see y'all in an hour and 10 minutes. And I want to thank y'all so much for being here. I kind of just threw this up. I was trying to schedule it, and then they all of a sudden went live with the sentencing. So I really appreciate all of you that stopped by and came in. And I'll see y'all in about an hour, a little over an hour. Thank you so much for being here. And I really appreciate it. Cara said, oh, I was talking about the older man in my county. Oh, yeah, okay. I know who killed you. Send hearts to everyone. And then Red Act Ed said, hashtag drink water, not pee. I think that's a great ending note. If you ever feel like you want to drink your own pee, grab a bottle of water, please. I'll see y'all in about an hour. Bye.